everybody, Shawn Morris with Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit.
And this is Tim here with the Fifth Ward, and let's get started.
Hey, welcome everybody to Cohoes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And this is our 8th episode, Timmy. Is that it? 8?
That's right, podcast number 8.
Wow, time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, we got to jump right into it. As you know, just on Tuesday there was a packed house at the Cohoes City Hall regarding the ambulance contract that the council tried to push through. And basically, there a lot of people came forward and speaking, but here's the bottom line, okay? Is what they did is they set aside $150,000. That gives them 90 days to look at these contracts. But what they tried to do is just ram through this one for ambulance, who's one of the three bidders, okay? So basically, if it was not for the people of Cohoes coming forward and say we need to table this, we need to sit down and sort this thing out and figure out what's going on in the best interest of the people of Cohoes. Eventually, Billy McCarthy, president of the council, painted himself into a corner by voting yes during the board of managers meeting, now faced 5 other council members voting to table the matter.
Hey, Timmy, let me just share my thoughts on that. I wouldn't get
Sure.
all excited and jump up and down because you had 5 people who voted the way they thought they needed to vote politically because they all, or most all of them, have a opponent coming up, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Set,
Yep.
right? So that's just smoke and mirrors. Secondly, they have to vote on it sooner or later because there's only 3 bids and we need an ambulance. What's really concerning to me is 2 things. One is that ever since I left office, this current administration has done absolutely everything possible to try to work in the dark of the night, and they are not transparent. The
That's
first
true.
thing that should have happened is they should have announced it 6 months ago when they knew the ambulance company was selling its certificate of need for the ambulance, and that they were going to have to start looking at some kind of process because we wouldn't have an ambulance, right?
That's right.
Then let's
Well,
fast forward and say they got to this bid process.
but keep in mind, the mayor said he thought it was all free.
Well, that
Yep.
means he was negotiating with the wall because,
Right.
the man
Right.
doesn't have any ability to truly negotiate.
Right.
He's an invert, Timmy.
Yeah.
He doesn't have, he may be a smart guy in some sense, but he
Yep.
doesn't have what it takes to be the mayor of a city because he's one dimensional. He's police one dimensional, right?
That's it.
When
That's
you're a
true.
state trooper and you lived in a military style job your whole life, you don't know how to act outside of that arena. But let
Right.
me
He's
kind of
in
get
this
back.
bubble.
That's
Go
right.
ahead.
He's in a bubble that doesn't fit into the city and it doesn't fit into the position of
Yeah.
a mayor.
Right.
But here's what happens. They go out to bid. So they write these specs of what they're looking
Right.
for. Then they send them out to bid. And then it has a date when the bids close. And then there should be a public meeting for the public, the media, and whoever else wants to go, just like the council meeting and every other meeting,
Yes.
where they would hold the meeting, open the bids, read out the name of the company and how much they bid, and everybody would know who bid and how much they bid. Then they would take those bids and they would sit down with experts in the field for which they are putting the bid out. For example, most of them are infrastructure bids. For the most part in cities. So
Yeah.
you'd have
Right.
DPW, you'd have the engineer, code, and a whole bunch of other people. In this particular case, you have one that's for public safety. So you'd have the fire chief, you'd maybe have somebody from the fire department if you wanted to have somebody sit there. You'd have the controller for the money part, and you'd have the mayor because he has to make the overall decision. And that would all be done in the day of light. But in this administration, you could go all the way back to the last meeting I had where we spent a lot of money to put a new website up that allowed us to put every single document that we reviewed at a meeting, every minute to that meeting, and anything relevant. You would click on it and you could go through every piece of paper that I looked at when I was making decisions. And they have not placed one meeting on that website or had a public forum since I've been gone for the board of managers who are in charge of and the oversight of these type of bids.
That's true. And the city clerk is required to take minutes at those meetings. She's not even invited in.
No, these are secret meetings. This is the secret society. Let me just tell you something. They all want to make it sound like I was some kind of monster and I was controlling the city with an iron fist. What I controlled with an iron fist is that we were going to move forward. And if you didn't want to get on the train, get out of the way, because we were an old dying city and I didn't have time for yesterday's people to try to convince me that yesterday's ideas were good for today, right? But everything we did was open and transparent because I believe in the public process. I believe that if I'm going to go out there and put my name on something, everybody's going to know what it is, and they would have a chance to beat me up if they wanted, to praise it if they wanted to, or at least know what was going on. And this is a secret society. So here we go. They get the bids. Nobody knows nothing about them. They open the bids. Nobody knows nothing about them. We don't even know what the bid was. Why was there only 3 people that bid? Was it because they limited it to 3? Why didn't they open it up all across the state of New York? Because they may have had a better opportunity at a cheaper price to get a better service. I don't know those answers, nor do you, nor does anybody in the public, nor does the council. So now they do all their secret stuff, and then they go, well, the bobbleheads are just going to vote for it. So they present it to the council for a vote blindly, right?
24 hours notice. 24. They
Blindly.
didn't even get a chance to read the contract.
Absolutely, because it was done blindly. And in most cases, the council's going to vote for it. Now, I'm not saying 95% of the time the council doesn't have to say, we have great respect for the mayor. We believe he's moving the city in the right direction. We just want a quick ability to have a conversation with him and find out why he's moving in what direction. And you don't necessarily have to have a month to read a contract if, in fact, you think everything's going in the right direction. But they can't possibly think that. We have no ambulance. And we're spending $650,000 freaking dollars, which is $650,000 more than we ever spent, which is almost half or maybe a quarter of the fire department's budget as a whole. Nobody's looked into whether the fire department itself can deliver this service at a better price and certainly a better product. And unless you see this council have a public safety meeting where they're really digging into this thing, all you got was a dog and pony show because people showed up and complained in an election year. And that's
And
my view.
well, what I did is I asked Adam Biggs, who's the council chair of the Public Safety Committee. On that chair is, from as best I know, based on what I can see online, which is obsolete information right now because they haven't met in like 2 years, is Don Russell and Justin Alicio. Now, I asked those 3 at the council meeting, when was the last time you had a meeting to discuss things like this? This is a huge public safety issue. They have not met.
See,
Okay.
the whole point of those meetings, Timmy, right? So we all know that in the cities, the mayor is the boss, right?
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
council's job really lies in, after the budget is made, is to be an advocate for its part of the city, right? If citizens have problems, they go
Right.
to the council member delivers it to the mayor. But they do have these committees where they can meet and have some internal dialogue about things that they can shape a consensus and bring it to the mayor and say, look, this is what's being said in the community. We're concerned about the ambulance. What ideas do you have? We have some ideas. We heard from, some people, and you start having dialogue to build some kind of project of how you're going to address these major issues.
And this is the very point that I brought on up to Adam Biggs at the time. Okay. Now look at, I mean, you take an example. Okay, city of Watervliet. It's got a population of 10,000, maybe 10,300 or so. They're running 2 of their own ambulances. They're at least 7,000 population less than us. So we have twice as many. And Watervliet is actually making profits down
Do
there.
they run 2 or 1?
They're running 2,
2 ambulances?
2 ambulances.
I know
That's
they
what I,
used to run. They used to run 1, and they used to have 2 rigs.
yeah.
And since I've retired from the fire department, I haven't really followed it that much. And it really wasn't until this whole ambulance thing's kind of sparked my
Right.
my
Well, I can
interest.
double check on that.
Yeah,
Double
check on that,
check.
because I thought they had 1 and 2 rigs, but they could have 2. I'm not positive,
Well,
but they certainly
when
they
they
certainly.
used
Oh, Go ahead. I'm
they
sorry.
don't use like layman's terms. Okay, when a firefighter says, "Well, what is a rig?" Well, do you call an ambulance a rig, or is that a pumper truck?
Well,
Uh,
an ambulance is an ambulance, and a rig they usually call a fire truck. So
okay,
you would have a pumper, a
so
ladder truck, an
maybe they
ambulance.
have one ambulance, but the bottom line is they have their own ambulance
They still
service.
have their own, and because they have one, then they have the ability to share it with mutual aid and get another city to come because they can return the favor, which is
Right,
something we can't do. And therefore, it isn't that other cities don't want to help. It's just that, hey, the other cities' taxpayers pay for their services and they can't deplete them to come here because we don't have a plan. Everybody knows, and the fire department knows, and they may not want to share it. I was in the process of setting up an ambulance for the city of Cohoes, which would have one of our guys on the ambulance. Somebody else would be providing the ALS, right? But we'd have
right,
ALS
yeah,
and one of our own guys every single day on an ambulance, and it wasn't going to cost us nothing, and we were going to make 70% of the profit.
yeah,
So the fact that this guy can't get it done is because he has no connections, he has no ability to reach out to other people and try to come up with ideas. He's by the book. And by the book
yeah.
doesn't mean that you're going to be successful. And it's example that he's not successful because we don't have that. I wish I was in a position to bring my idea to that guy and say, "Here, let me help you do it because I care about the city." But you can't even get into his office, and certainly he won't talk
Uh,
to me because I call them. Well, I supported Al Paul because that whole clown thing just makes me laugh that
right, right.
you'd
Yeah.
suspend somebody
Well,
for that.
he has a closed door policy, okay, and
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
And he's stone cold anyway. Look at I mean, I believe it's the city of Lockport. Okay, they went out and bought a $10,000 used ambulance. They spent $15,000 to upgrade it to all the requirements to satisfy the state of New York. Okay, and then they put their own ambulance into service. Okay, and run by their own fire department. Now, why is it the Cohoes is so pathetic that we can't do something similar?
Well, first and foremost is that I believe this, and I don't know this to be a fact, and I'm
Yeah,
just going to tell you how I feel. John McDonald has a lot of how this guy runs the city.
that's
Okay.
true. That's true.
And John McDonald hated the fire department, and he was anti. He never wanted us to have an ambulance.
Well, he called you a Hitler
And he called me a Hitler, and he called Ralph
because you were
Signoraci
fighting.
nuts,
Right.
and he
Yeah.
said he let old people. His email said the old people can lay on the floor; they don't pay taxes,
They don't.
and only when he became an assemblyman and the unions really mattered to get elected, then did he
Yeah.
become a union guy. Because prior to that, he was anti-union, and
Yes.
he tried to destroy the Taylor Law and screw firemen over and police over. But that's a whole nother
Yeah.
story for another
Yeah.
podcast. But because he is anti ambulance, you can imagine that this guy is getting the chatter in his ear,
Same
and
thing.
he's
Yeah.
not smart enough to just separate and say, I'm going to do what I think is right. Is it a long process? It's a process. Would we have to probably pay to have an ambulance in our city to somebody while the process was taking place? Absolutely. Do I think you could use somebody far less than 650,000? If I was in the seat, I guarantee it wouldn't cost a fraction of that. And lastly, um, you can't forget about this because it's important. The ambulance, whether it's run by the city or run by private, still charges people for its use.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So if the city had to invest 650,000 into its own fire department and it got back 1.2, 1.3 million, isn't that a profit?
Yeah, and most of the fire departments of cities that are running these things are making money on it. Okay, it's
Even
profitable
if
because
even if you lost money and you
oh,
lost 200,000, isn't that better than losing 650,000? You
I
still
agree
have
with
a
that. Yeah,
better
that's true.
service. You control the service. You're in control of all of it and how it operates rather than being at the beck and call of another company. And it's costing you 450,000 less. I guarantee you can do it. You have to have the will to do it, right? I used to say, what makes somebody go to work every day and just be happy to be a slave for a paycheck, and somebody who's willing to take a gamble and ends up making millions of dollars? It's you
Yeah.
got to get out of your comfort zone every once in a while, Timmy. When you're the mayor of a
Oh
city,
yeah,
you
I
can't
agree.
sit in the comfort zone. You can't say, I'm going to stay right here where I feel safe and comfortable, because the world will pass you by and the city will collapse. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Just take a walk through the downtown. It's more vacant buildings than you could ever imagine. And the ones that are getting filled, like Smith's, had nothing to do with the city, right? and the streets are dirty, and there's a whole bunch of problems, and it's because they stay in their comfort zone. You don't want to get criticized. You don't want people to say bad things. You could spend a whole career in politics and do nothing, and nobody will say anything about you. But as soon as you take a position, you're always going to have people from one side after you and the other side supporting you, and you become controversial. But that's how you have to be if you're going to be successful. So right now, our ambulance and our fire department is in a bad way, and this ain't going to make it any better. These people ain't going to make a difference because they tabled something. They're just going to let it fester on for a couple of weeks and then go, "Oh, we have no choice. We need an ambulance." They ain't going to
Right.
change their mind. So don't think for one second that any of those people who voted to table this did it for any other reason than politics.
Well, now the pressure's on, okay, because I'm calling out Biggs publicly. You are the chair. Okay, it can't be just a title for you to add to your resume. You need to sit down and sort this thing on
Well,
out
let me
for the
ask you this
better of
question
the
though.
cause.
It's too late because there's nothing to sort out. See, this is the things that should have been sorted out months and months ago. Right now, you're at the edge of the cliff. And
Well, that's
if you don't make a move, you don't
well,
have an ambulance,
well,
Timmy.
this is what they tried to do, Sean. They tried to throw money at the problem.
Well, that's
Okay.
that because that's what politicians do, right? A politician is a taxing, a spending, a taxing and a
Yeah.
spending. That's the machine that they are. And I said that to you many times, right? I never want to be the tax and spend guy. I want to be the solutions guy. And the solutions guy sometimes needs to spend, but you don't want to use tax money. You want to bring new revenue into the city. And
Yeah.
that's what we focused on. But what I'm saying to you is that we're at the witching hour. They could
Yeah.
sit down and talk about it all they want. What are they going to do?
Well, they've
So
got
you
to do
can't
something. Okay.
you can't do anything because you got to have an ambulance. The
Well,
mayor makes the final decision, and they
we're
should have been
already right.
they
We're
should have been
already
sitting down with him.
putting out 50 grand a month until they
They're,
get this thing done. So
yeah,
I see. I don't know if they can get it done in the next 90 days, but they're going to end up probably transferring more money to cover more costs. So
it would take him about a year probably to get a ambulance into the
yeah,
to the department based on
yeah,
getting
everything
your
that's
certificate
needed.
of need and all the stuff that you
And I
have to
think
go
they could
through.
buy a couple of ambulances from the town of Colonies.
You could buy you could
I
get
don't know
you
how true that is. So
Listen, you can get ambulances that are in real good shape, and what really matters is the life safety equipment that you put in them.
that's right.
We only go a couple miles from here to Samaritan Hospital or Albany Med. We've been lucky to be close to those hospitals. So the startup cost, if you did it right, is not going to be as much as this guy's telling you, $1.4 million.
Yeah.
I've asked them, and again, I think I'm going to send an email to the mayor and ask him to break down his $1.4 million cost because it's absolutely absurd that you
Nobody's
would.
seen any breakdown of costs anyway. Okay,
Well,
no,
you can't
everything was
break
done
down
in
the cost.
secrecy.
You can't break down the cost if you haven't really sat down and try to come up with, the solution. They haven't done anything to look at putting it in the fire department. It was a no right from the beginning. No,
Right.
period. We don't want to
And
get our fire. And I
and I
guarantee you, Timmy,
Mhm.
other cities would say the ambulance is an expense and it may make some money, but it costs money. And there's all kinds of back and forth. But at the end of the day, you're out of options, brother.
Yep.
You're out of options.
Well, look, it doesn't matter here on this point too. That as I understand the ambulance that they want to go with, okay, is non-union, and would that be a problem parking a non-union ambulance service in a union firehouse?
Well, listen, I think at the end of the day, the firefighters care about one thing is making sure the citizens are safe, right?
Yep.
Do we all want to have unionized workers? Yeah, because I think they are some of the best workers. They're held to a higher standard. They make sure that there's the most training, safety procedures, safety precautions. I just think unions, you know, play an important role. And I think that this ambulance company really was a company that was just buying up all the certificate of needs and becoming a transportation operation. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but I've never seen them in any other city locally where they provide ALS and they're actually an emergency services ambulance. They seem to be more of a transport type ambulance.
Right.
So I don't know if Cohoes is new to them and the way they're operating, or if they do it on a sporadic basis throughout the state. But I
Sean,
know
what?
that.
Take a moment and describe for our listeners. Okay, what do you mean by ALS?
Well,
Because
advanced
they
life
may not.
support.
Right, right.
So
Well, they get 20.
95.
I could tell you that if you're getting ALS and you're being transported to a hospital, okay, I know the fee that's being charged is about $2,700.
Well, here's what happens, right? Basic life
Yeah,
support means that
yeah,
you called the ambulance, you hurt your back, you fell down, hurt your knee,
right,
you broke your finger, you're going to need some
yeah.
stitches, you got
That would
hit in
be
the
like
face. You got hit.
BLS, right?
Yeah, you got hit in the face with a baseball. You got a
Basic,
big black eye.
right,
People use the ambulance for that, and so that's a basic, transportation. You pick
right.
them up, wrap them up.
ALS is like
ALS is you're having a heart
a heart
attack.
attack.
You're having chest pains. You're having a stroke. You've been in a bad car accident. You got shot. You got stabbed. Something that requires an advanced level of treatment to save your life. Luckily, they are far and few between. They are the lower level of calls, but people who have asthma attacks. I mean, luckily, BLS has expanded its services. The state has allowed basic life support to include like EpiPens and epinephrine and other kind of uh, um, different medicines that you can take that they wouldn't allow you to take in the past. Um, but you still need ALS, man. If you're having a heart attack and you need medicines and you need to inject you with IVs and all those things. Um, and
Yeah,
who the hell am I? And who the hell are you to guess? We're not doctors. When somebody
right.
calls, I've had calls that started out as BLS and halfway over the hospital, they went into cardiac arrest, right?
Kind
So
of
you
happened to
don't
me,
know.
actually. Kind of.
Yeah.
I actually had friends drive me over to the hospital. I wasn't feeling good. I get over to the hospital and they're telling me, "You're having a heart attack." I said, "No, I'm not."
Yeah.
Okay,
And you
but
were.
they said, "Oh yeah." I said, "No, I'm not." And eventually they said, I said, "Oh yes, I am." So yeah, I had friends got me over there, and my guess if I had to wait for an ambulance, okay, and as soon as I got a, they once I was in Samaritan, they transferred me right down to Albany Med. Okay,
Yeah.
so
So,
it's essential to have people like that on the ready. Okay.
yeah, I think every ambulance should just have one on the ready. And if they don't need to provide it, they just provide the basic support. Look at, I'm going to end this part with the ambulance because we've beat on it for
Yeah.
about 5 episodes. Here's the reality. You have a city whose administration has failed its people in many ways. One is to be open and transparent, abide by the open meetings law, which they fail to do all the time, refuse to recognize that their decisions that they've made are not the best decisions. So you have to have the courage to say, I tried something and it didn't work. So I'm going to pull back and try something different.
Yep.
Um, and what happened that really is the most egregious part of this whole thing is this is a vindictive attack on the firefighters because they stood up to this guy who has proven now in the short time that he's been in office that if you stand up to him, he attacks you and punishes you and comes after you, and everybody walks on eggshells. And we've seen it with the DPW, where they're suspending people for 20 days, 40 days, 30 days. You've seen
Yeah.
it with the fire department, where they went down from 6 guys to 5 guys to 4. And there's already talks that they were going to go to 4 and leave it at 4, but they were afraid it was an election year. And because it was election year and all this stuff was going on with the ambulance, they didn't want to go down to 4. Granted, they will try to go down to 4 because that's what they want to do, not because they think it's the right thing. It's the vindictive thing. And how dare you stand up to me? I am the mayor.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that is probably the reason we are in such peril right now, is because of ego.
right. I'm leaving City Hall after that meeting, and who follows up and comes right up to me? Chris Briggs, right? He doesn't like the fact that we called him a rat.
Well,
Okay,
I'm sorry.
but look at during a city meeting of the finance committee, he's sitting in there and he's calling Randy Knifka delusional. So, the guy could turn around and he can label people with other names like that, but when you hit him right back, he doesn't like it. It's time for you to grow up,
It's time
Christopher.
for him to do
You know,
exactly what he's doing is get the
y-
hell out because he's done
yeah,
nothing but set the city
yeah,
backwards. And I told
it's,
you the story that I
yeah,
had. I think we had a
right,
pretty good relationship.
yeah,
And look, it's sometimes I'm brass and sometimes I say things and then I go, shit, I shouldn't have used that, that method. But when I get pissed off because I see people trying to push back
yeah,
against progress and they're listening to people who were here before I was that were setting us backwards, you kind of get upset. And I did. I called them a name, and I regret that I called them the name that I called them. But you know what? In the heat of the battle, things are said. But
that's where that, yeah,
he was going behind my back. He was being a rat.
yeah, he
And there's
was
no
doing
other way
that,
to say it.
right,
You don't go if you wanted to do something, you have the courage to come up and say, "This is what I want to do. I'm going to fight you on it, and we got to figure out how to resolve it, or I'm not going to support you on something you
yeah,
need." I can
yeah,
accept that because there's in love and war and politics, that's how it works, right?
yeah, that's it,
But
that's
you
it,
don't go behind somebody's back, and that's what he did, and I lost all respect for him. And then you know what did they do? They locked me out of my office, scratched my name off, and Chris Briggs is
yeah.
the one who packs up my office like I'm some kind of fucking murderer, right?
Oh,
And
you
oh,
got through all that,
I got through that far, and see what happens. Chris Briggs
yeah,
got me all fired up. Beep beep beep. I'll beep it out because
yeah.
oh god. But
No,
see what
leave it
happens.
go.
See what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah,
That's the problem. You have
right.
people who want what they want, and if they can't get it, they're going to do what they can to help sabotage you. Now,
Okay,
Donnie Russell got in
yeah,
trouble on 3 occasions.
right.
I don't know if he did anything wrong. I wasn't there. And it wasn't my job to make the determination, right? But these guys had me at 3 separate meetings couldn't wait to try to get rid of me for stuff that turned out to be
Look,
false.
I mean, look, Keeler
That's
was
the
right
kind of,
in the Times Union saying that you need to step down for the good of the city. Yet
yeah.
you got Russell doing shit like this,
And you
and the
got him
bottom,
using DPW for his own
right,
private,
right, and it
work on
gets
his house.
look at let's touch on a couple things about transparency, okay?
Sure.
Even during the a regular common council meeting, okay? The city clerk, now this is not her fault, okay? She can't record the meetings because the equipment is in there is it's just old and obsolete and doesn't work like 90% of the time. So she can't sit down there and write everything verbatim. They normally try to record it and then they transcribe later. But I mean, we're at a point where we can't get minutes at any meetings because we don't have the means to record it. Okay,
So
so
let me. Oh, go ahead, Tim.
so
I'm sorry.
so so but during when you had a system going, we were able to zoom and stream and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I'd like you to touch on that because we have a problem recording minutes and
Yeah.
getting minutes put online.
So when I took all over, I realized that we had people that were handicapped that couldn't get upstairs because it's an old building and there's no way to retrofit it to put an elevator in. And I recognized in the first couple meetings that the cassette tape thing that they used was just antiquated and it made no sense to me.
That's right.
So every day I was trying to find ways to improve city government and bring it to the people. Transparency, right?
Right.
Every meeting, transparency. So at the time, and you're talking 5 years now in technology, we could be using this technology that we use right now, which
Right.
would probably something I'd be doing if I was still there. But the technology we had was go-to meetings, and we would set up the go-to meetings. We'd put a link on the website that any resident could go to. They'd click on the link, type in the number, and they would be up to 100 people could participate and watch the meeting and actually talk and hear.
Yeah.
Now, at the time, there was no way to videotape it and store it, but go-to meetings would audio it, and the audio would be stored to that particular meeting, and you could put it up online, and they could click on it and listen to the meeting, or you could put it on the website after the fact. Um, so we wanted to make sure that all the meetings were live streamed, so you could watch them in real time, and then be able to listen to them whenever you wanted to listen to them. Why they don't have that now, I don't know. If they got rid of it, I don't know. But
It's just broken. It's
yeah,
broken. It just doesn't work.
so they
And
don't have
then,
go-to meetings.
right. So with the city clerk's inability to have recordings, if I say, hey, I want to have copy of the recording by Freedom of Information Law of the incident that involved Al Paul and the exchange with the mayor, okay, I can't get it. Okay, it's
Yeah,
because it does because there's no recording. So the
no,
mayor can sit there and call him names, and even at the last meeting with the ambulance, okay, there was another exchange, okay, going back and forth, back and forth. Okay, bottom line is, okay, is that the ability to record meetings like this too also protects what is said and done.
yeah,
I had a meeting in which Chris Briggs, he sat there and called me a liar. All right, but because there was no recording, okay, or a glitch in the recording, whatever happened, okay, I couldn't bring it. I couldn't get a copy of what was said.
yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
anyway,
you
I mean,
probably could have back then, because if I was I still in office?
I believe you might have been. Yeah, you might
Because
have
all
been.
of our recordings were recorded by the Go-To Meetings program. So what
Yeah.
happened was, we never had mics that worked, nothing. So we got all the microphones working, so that when you're at the meeting, they had to talk into the mic. The mic was attached to the program. The program would pick it up, and the Go-To Meetings would audio all of the meetings. Now, today's day, I would be having a far greater and more advanced system, but I believe that the public should have access to everything that's said anytime they want it. And I probably would have, now that we have these type of opportunities and the money they got from COVID, I would have probably put in the state of the art, um, people can see and hear what goes on. Look at, I've had
Yeah,
exchanges, Timmy. I've had exchanges with residents. I mean, look at, you're only human, and
it
sometimes
happens. Right.
your buttons get pushed, man.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
but you can't suspend somebody for 20 days when you're doing the same thing.
Exactly. Look at another little thing that happened after the meeting. Okay, Justin Alicio is a council member now, right? When
Yeah.
this kid was a boy, he was on my little league team as a 10, 11, and 12-year-old. He was a small kid, but he played big. Okay, we actually had a player caught in a pickle between first and second base, and Justin was my catcher. This you'll probably have never see this in baseball again. But who got the put out at second base when we had that player caught in a pickle? It was Justin Alicio at second base in full catching
Who
gear.
was running? Me?
But Justin whipped down there, and this is how well trained the team was, and I'll never forget what he did. But now Justin is a council member. I got to
Yeah.
hold him to account. Okay,
Yeah.
after the meeting, his mom's all over me about, you're mean to Justin. No, no, look at Justin. You got to let him grow up, Linda. Love you, love Justin, but you got to let him grow up.
Well,
Fight his own
it's
fights.
quite embarrassing if your mommy's got to come to the meeting and stick
Oh,
up for you, for
jeez.
God's sakes. I mean, I think if that was my mom, I'd say, Mom, sit down and keep your
Yeah.
mouth closed, please. I'm a big boy here, right? Justin is
Yeah.
taking on a position. Um, he has not always been truthful. He voted against splitting parts of the island up, so he made this motion to table
Yeah.
something. It doesn't matter. This should have been done a long time ago. It's too late now. This is just a
Yeah.
dog and pony show. And these guys have some opponents. You got Tommy Fife down the island, a well-known kid,
Yeah.
firefighter, great
Yep.
guy, and he's got to give him a run for his money and everything that he's got. You have, you know, I knew this was going to happen, right? Billy
Yeah.
Smith, whether you like him or don't like him, whether you
Yeah.
agree with him or don't agree with him,
Yeah.
he has the courage of his own convictions to stand up and say what he feels. And I've had it out with Billy. Believe me, me and Billy ain't always been on the nicey kissy side of the table, right? We've had some arguments. He ain't
Yep.
much different than I. And
Yep.
I said to him, here's what's going to happen to you. Mark my words, because you were part of it, Billy. Everybody ganged up on me, because when you're outspoken and you go against the fray, they're going to come after you. And sure as shit, what happens, right? All of a
They're
sudden,
run.
out of the
Yeah.
blue, you got a kid that the mayor put up to run against Billy Smith. And I
Yeah.
would tell people right now, this kid may be the nicest kid in the world, but don't ever sell your representative, because he's out there. Never sell him off is the word, I guess. Never sell him
Yeah.
off and not vote for him because somebody else puts another candidate up, because they're only putting another candidate up because this guy's got the courage to fight for you as a resident.
Yeah,
Most residents don't have a fighter on their side.
right. This is
He's a
exactly
fighter.
what's going on. Okay, this is
Yeah.
your what I like to call your typical Democratic machine. Okay, and they decided they got to get rid of Smith, and they're just going to run an opponent. They do this all the time. This is
Of
not
course they do.
unusual. Okay,
Listen, Chris Briggs is not running again, right?
right. He's picked his own
Right.
replacement.
And listen, I think the guy that's running is a great guy. Him and his wife been part of the
Yep.
neighborhood watch.
Mm-hmm.
They're just good people.
Right.
There's nothing that I can say about them
Yeah.
that doesn't say and ring good people, right?
But they need to
But Chris,
understand they're not being put in there to simply be bobbleheads and yes men.
exactly, and I hope and I believe that the person who wins that won't be a bobblehead.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm getting to: who is Chris Briggs to think that he owns that seat,
Yeah.
that he has a right to pick his replacement? Because that's what happened,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Chris
true.
Briggs
That's true.
goes and
Yep.
picks his baby. Now,
Yeah.
granted, the guy that he picked, I'd pick him too. I love
Yep.
him. I think he's a
Yep.
great guy, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
I'll root for him, and I'll call my family and my friends and say, hey, will you support him? Because I don't even think he's got an opponent because most people really really like him, and I wish him nothing but the best. But you can't have this guy up here. You
Yeah.
can't have Bill Keeler picking people to run against your candidate or your current council member just because he's willing to fight against the fray, right?
Yeah.
And
This is what's going on in the first ward, folks.
boom,
Right.
and that's what you
And
got. You have the
that's what's
mayor.
going on in the first ward.
You got the mayor of the city saying, "I don't want
Yeah.
Billy Smith because he yells at me." Billy,
Yeah.
I hope you're watching. Keep yelling, keep fighting, keep kicking, keep scratching, because most people in the city know that you're the only one that has the courage of your own convictions. I would encourage everybody else to run. I'm not looking for people to go to the city and get in a fight with the mayor. You're Democrats. He's a Democrat. For the most part, you should support your mayor, give him the opportunity. But when your mayor is doing such a horrible job, you guys should at least have the courage to pull him aside and say, man, you're putting us in a bad way because these are just bad decisions. I'm going to write an email to the Mike DeRocher. I want to know how we're making out with the lights. We spent $6 million. Are we now saving money, or is the aggregate of the 6 million plus the current light bill more than we were paying before we borrowed the 6 million? I want to know about that. I want to know about some other things, because every single thing that I see that they're spending money on is a losing proposition, and the ambulance is going to take the cake. It's going to be the cherry on top of the ice cream.
Hey, I got
Worst
a couple
decision.
new right, and I got a couple news items, just things that I picked out of the city planning agenda and things like that. Just want to run by people so they have an idea what's in the works going on here. Like there, if you recall, on Main Street, we've all known it growing up as kids as Zulos on the corner of, I think it's Main and not Newark. That's a little side street. I think it may be Howard. I'm not really sure, but anyway, yeah, the old Zulu store is gonna look to open up as a little mini convenience store.
Wayne Hamilton, his grandmother ran that store for like 40 years.
Yeah,
And
so
um, and
so
so as she got older, Wayne ran the store as well. And it's
yeah.
I didn't see no ribbon cutting though. I find it ironic. Is it no ribbon cutting for that little store?
Well,
It's
it's
open, I think. I see people down there the other day.
well, I don't know if it's truly open because it's in the minutes for March that for a recent meeting. So look at, hey, if they get open, so they get open. That would be great. But there's a lot of new apartments all around there, so it'll probably work out good for them. And then down on Simmons Island, the old school on Laura Drive.
Yep.
Okay, they're looking to take that and put in one section 9 apartments and another section 3 apartments. That's what's going on down there in that that area. And then look at Congress just passed a law to officially end COVID. Okay, the COVID emergency. So I wonder how that's going to factor in with the Eat in the Street program that we put together in Cohoes, which was all designed to save restaurant help businesses during the COVID epidemic. And now that COVID is officially over by Congress, how does that affect our the Eaton Street, because that's about the only program Napier's got going for him.
Well, I don't think it has any bearing on it. I think the reality is Congress can say what Congress wants, but cities, towns, and villages are going to do what city, towns,
Yeah,
and villages want, right? I mean, the Congress,
yeah,
for the purpose of that, maybe that means that all of the millions of federal workers who've been sitting home for 2.5 years collecting full pay have to go back to
yeah,
work. I don't
yeah.
really know what it means.
Right.
Uh,
So,
but
but the Napier shacks, remember they were all taken apart and thrown up against a building
yeah,
on Central Island. They're all gone now. So I think they've been relocated to their new home up at the old Reservoir Number 2, stacked up and not covered or protected. So they're just all going to get rained on
the
and whatever.
reservoir
Yeah,
is
the reservoir.
something that I like to talk about. I think that's. I'm glad you brought that up to me.
Yeah,
So back in the day, we used to have a res, and we used to have like the reservoir just in case we needed a backup, right?
right. Is that
And
still operational, by the way?
no,
I mean,
so here's what happened. So that reservoir is behind. Well, it used to be Saint. Is it Saint
well, it's
Marie's?
Holy
Holy
Trinity
Trinity
now.
now. It used to be Saint Marie's, right?
Yeah, the parking lot across the
So
street.
you go across the street. There's a side road that runs
Yeah,
between the parking lot and that
yeah, it's
house that sits
more
above.
like a little path.
And that used
That's
to be full of water. That
yeah,
was the
yeah,
reserve reservoir.
yeah.
Over the course of the years, somehow the city of Cohoes, and I don't believe they ever had a permit to do it. I'd like to
Yeah.
know.
It filled it
Used
all
it
in.
as a dump,
Yeah.
and they
And
filled it in, and that's where they threw all the dead deer carcasses and all the shit that they got rid of. The problem is, Timmy,
yep.
and if I lived on that street, I'd be getting a collective lawsuit against this city because this city filled it up so high that all of the water. Now you got to remember behind that. So you have the reservoir, right?
Oh yeah, it's
And
full.
then it's a big hill going down all the way down to the street.
Yes it
So
is.
it's not like the houses are level. It's a big hill.
Yeah.
When it rains, the water rushes down that hill because it can no longer go into that res because they filled it with all this dead
Yeah.
deer and wood and bricks
Yeah.
and concrete and whatever
Yeah. Curbs.
curbs that it floods out all those houses. And the city has done absolutely nothing to fix it. And I know a family that lives up there, and I've gone to their house and watched that water come down. You would have thought it was like the second waterfalls in Cohoes. And I told them, why
Yeah.
don't you file a lawsuit? The city did this. I bet you there's no permit to do that. They illegally dumped, and now you got the residual of that dumping, which is thousands of gallons of water pouring down into your house.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that they've spoken to the mayor and they had somebody go up there and they did some little bit of work, but it's a disaster directly related to the city. When I became the mayor of the city and I refused to dump, one of the things when I was knocking on doors up on Garner Street, where the people would say they're dumping all this stuff in the viaduct down there, and this is they're bringing trucks and dumping, and it became a huge dump along the side of the two bridges, right on this side and
Yeah.
that side of the
Yeah. Yeah.
bridge. So the first thing I did is I caught a hold of Kenny Radler, said, "Get the fence guy up, put a fence up, no more dumping." We put the fence up, and 3 weeks later, I got a letter that we had to pay a $20,000 fine for dumping illegally over the bridge and in that area. I turned it into a parking lot, put a chain up, but we still had to pay the fine. I can't imagine why somebody hasn't turned them in for that dump, the old res, because it's really causing havoc on people's houses. I mean, it's a disgrace, and the city should be ashamed. And
Well, as soon as the weather gets better and I can get a drone up, I'm going to go up there and get a lot of that on video. I could see just from looking at it from Google Earth. Okay, they're the old, the curb concrete that they put in for sidewalks, those curb edges.
yeah,
They're all over the place down there.
it's a mess.
It really is. Okay, so
And they
I
should
do
have to
plan on
clean it
getting
out,
some.
and they should have left it the way it was so it caught the water and didn't flood the people.
Well, Sean, what I would have done is I would have cleaned that whole area on out, and I would have put solar panels in there, opposed on top of our reservoir.
I
Okay,
don't think that's going to happen anyway, Timmy. Truthfully,
I don't think so either. I mean, all the solar panels are stuck on a ship on the west coast, and the government's not letting them in the
and they're coming
country.
from China.
Yeah, and it's true. So I don't
No,
see it. I just don't see them getting here.
e-
Hey,
e- either do I.
look at I don't know if you can see my virtual background here behind me, okay? We're using artificial intelligence to put backgrounds behind us. At least I am on my end. And so just as a disclaimer, okay, Sweet Happy Days, I'm happy to promote their Easter displays and everything. It's in my background here, and that doesn't mean they endorse anything we say, or agree or disagree. Okay, but I'm looking to give our businesses a little bit of promotion, throw their businesses in my background here. Okay, and you know, let's try to keep Cohoes businesses going. So if you're interested in getting on the podcast just to have your business in our background, give us a holler. I'll put you on up.
Yeah, that's great, Timmy. It's really sad. I've talked to a couple businesses that really want to come on and talk about some of the disappointments that they have, and they're
Yeah.
petrified. Everybody's scared. Everybody's
Well,
scared.
they're calling downtown ghost town now.
It is a ghost town. I'm going to
Okay.
tell you something. I found a post. Let me just look at my phone for a minute. I found a post. You know what
Yeah.
happens? These
And
things pop.
while you're doing that, find that. But look at for those people here, you see this book? It's It's called Big Mike, Uncle Dan, and Me, and that's a picture of City Hall. Okay, this book here is being sold on Amazon right now. Okay, and it describes how the city of Cohoes, Democratic machine, the most corrupt in the state of New York. And this book was written by Paul Van Buskirk, and it's been acknowledged by several people like ethics board member Charlie Valeni, Randy Knifka, and all that stuff. So people, just want to let you know that that book is on out there. You can see it on Amazon. If you screenshot this, you can see what it's called.
Well, I don't know, Timmy, to tell you the
Yep.
truth.
Yep.
I don't believe everything in the book because in that book, on one of the pages, they have me down as a man who embezzled money from the Democratic Party.
Right. Page two. Read
Yeah, yeah.
page 245.
So on page 245, I never knew I embezzled money from anybody. I
Well,
never stole a nickel in my life.
when
And
did you find that out?
about
Today,
five
right?
minutes ago when you
Right.
put that book up,
When I put the book up and I
and I
told you
called my
what I
lawyer
read.
5 minutes after that because I've been pushed around enough by these people. I've taken enough beating all because I wanted to be the mayor of a city, and I'm not going to sit back and take a beating anymore.
Yeah.
These people. I had one thing. I had one thing happen to me, and that's because I called Governor Cuomo the most corrupt governor in America. And if I didn't do that, um, none of this stuff would have happened. And I don't take one thing back that I said because he ended up being one of the most corrupt governors in America. But everything that ever happened to me legally, I gave into because I had to take care of my family, and that was more important to me than to worry about whether or not I was going to spend every penny I made in my life to keep fighting for a $500 check. They would have to arrest every single politician in the goddamn country for what they said that I did, which is take a check for $500 and put it in the wrong account. Yeah,
Well,
I
what's
did. I
coming
put
up?
it in the wrong account and I gave the money back and used it on my campaign. It was a farce what they did to me. And then you have this guy in his book writing that I embezzled money from the political party.
Well, look at
Uh,
we've got some more information going to be coming out soon about what's going on in the city. I could tell people just up front. I don't want to leak out real big details yet, but I could tell you that we're missing about $300 in postage stamps. Okay, out of City Hall, and it's attached to the mayor's office. Okay,
let
so
me let me read you
so
some
down the
stuff. Oh, go ahead, Timmy.
right.
I'm
So
sorry.
down the road here, I'm just waiting on certain things to
What page will
unfold.
he be in the book for embezzling stamps?
Yeah. Well,
Good.
that'll be in the next book.
That'll be in my
Okay.
book, right? The
Right.
Truth, Lies, and Political Bullshit book. But I
Right.
just want to read you this, Tim, because it popped up, and
Yep.
I thought it was
Yep.
really nice because you just talked about something that's the truth, right? Cohoes is dead.
Yep.
It's a ghost
Yes.
town, right?
Ghost Town.
And this was popped up in my memory from 3 years ago, and it says, "How about this for a city moving forward on the verge to becoming an all-America city once again? Cohoes Music Hall for the first time rated as the number one rated music hall in the capital region. Cohoes, for the first time ever, is the number 5 best city in the capital region. Cascade Restaurant, number 4 best in the region. Um, Best touring play, number 3 in the Cohoes Music Hall. Best barbecue pit, number 2 in the city. Best theater company, number 2 in the capital region, Park Playhouse." And it goes on and lists all these things that we accomplished in 2 years. And for the first time, it put us on the history books of being the top city, the top restaurants, the top musical venues, and there was so many more things. And so I'm proud of that stuff. Um, I'm a little disappointed that just 3 years later, it's like a big pencil came in and erased everything.
Yeah.
I believe we can get back to where we needed to be. I believe we could have been and would have been that all America city once again. They told me that I would never get money to change 787. I know there's people that are on both ends of it, but when you pick up kids that were killed on that road enough times, you realize something needed to be done, right? It was a travesty. It was a disaster. It was a dangerous place. And they said nobody. 30 years they've been trying to get it, and we got the money. And when I knew we got that money, I knew we were on the right path to becoming that all America city. I think the city can still do that. But I think there's a lot of changes that need to be made. Now, instead of promoting the number one music halls, the number one restaurants, the number one rocks the blocks, we're promoting we don't have an ambulance and people are waiting 2 hours when they're sick to get to the hospital. You're not going to get ahead and be the number one city in the capital region if that's the headlines. And so I hope this council gets a facelift. I hope there's some new blood that gets in there. I'm rooting for Ed Kenner. I know he's got an uphill battle, but I don't think the guy in office is the guy for the city. I know that maybe we shouldn't take political stances on. Well, maybe we should, and maybe we
Well,
do.
it,
But at the end of the day, if you want your city to move forward, you got to have forward-thinking people. You can't have stiff suit people that look at their feet when they're walking down the street rather than look at the residents. That should be a giveaway that that's the wrong person to represent you. So that's just my 2 cents.
okay, well, look at, I think we covered a lot for today. Okay, if you're ready to give it a wrap.
I'm ready to give it a wrap. I got to call my
Okay.
lawyer. I want to rap on the guy who wrote the book.
And all the people who acknowledged it was true.
Yeah, yeah. Who
Okay.
acknowledges it? Read the acknowledging people to me
Jeez.
so I can call each one of them. Randy Knifka.
Yeah, Randy's in here. Well, that's another reason why you get to throw Randy out the window.
Yeah. Well, at
Okay.
least he had the courage to come back and tell everybody he was lying all the whole time, right?
That's right. That's right. Okay, look at page 245 in that book, and page 247 are the acknowledgments. Okay. And I'm getting a lot of messages there coming in on my computer, and I think the battery's getting low, so I got to call it a wrap.
Hey, Timmy, it was good to see you. See you next
Thank you.
week
Until next
on
time, for looking forward
Cohoes, the good, bad, and ugly.
to, yeah, we're looking forward to podcast number 9 next week.
Take care, Tim.
Take care. Bye.